Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. I've got a PS4 Slim here that is very dusty and is in need of, well, dusting and cleaning. So we're going to take this thing apart, we're going to dust it out, we're going to put some fresh thermal paste on it as well. I think I've taken apart one of these Slims before, but it was a while back, so I'm going to cheat and follow a guide for this video. However, if you prefer to see how to do things in video form, then this is for you. Or if you just want to see something dirty become clean, then this is also for you. It's fairly well worn, this guy. Lots of dust along the front and stuff. Lots of scratches where USB device has been plugged in and things like that, but that's just cosmetic. So we start around the back with this. We're going to start by sliding off this cover here. Then we've got to take out this screw and remove the hard drive. So we'll stick a Phillips in there. And then pull that out. If only it was that simple on an Xbox, huh? We'll give this a blowout with the airline when we get to actually dusting stuff as well, just for posterity. So next, there's a screw behind this warranty sticker. So I'm just going to pick off that warranty sticker with a blade. You could probably just mash through it with a screwdriver if you wanted. There we go. Don't think we're particularly worried about the warranty sticker, so I'm just going to rip it off entirely. And now we've got a T8. Yes, a T8 screw. Take that guy out. And now we need to pick up these two corners here. So where the triangle and the X are. Oh, there's a triangle and X up there as well. Well, look at the orientation. We've got here and here. And these corners should pick up. And then it'll kind of slide this direction. And come off like so. There we go. Gosh. Yeah, you can see why this thing needs cleaning. It's got literal carpets in it. Roll on the comments about skin cells and all the rest of it. And apparently just this screw needs to come off. Not entirely sure why, but I'll take that out. And then the top cover comes off. And this happens in pretty much the same way as the bottom one. So from the slope pointing upwards, we pick up those corners, and that also just pops out. And now we're ready to take out the power supply. Next, we've got 3 security T9s to come off. So the security T screwdrivers have got a little hole, a little post sticking up, so you need to have a hole in your screwdriver. If you don't have security Torx, you can often blag these out with flat blade screwdrivers. Do I have one to hand? I probably do. So a flat blade screwdriver, you can usually dig this into the screw. Oh, that's even loose anyway. So what about that one? This one is loose enough, yeah. These are coming out just with a busted flat blade screwdriver that can fit between the security bit. I've also seen when you're using one of these that if you give it enough abuse, you can just snap the post off inside the screw and then it becomes a regular Torx screw. And that's actually the strategy I use for the thick boy PS4s. But obviously remember that doing this will mess up your screwdrivers, so don't use your nice screwdrivers for it, use your crappy ones. I don't use my wearers when I'm doing stupid stuff like that. And now this plate comes off. And we also need to take out these Phillips screws here. And possibly this one as well? I'm going to guess so. That's an antenna, that one. Right, is this power supply coming out now? It is, it's on its way. There we go. So as I flip this up, we've got 2 big pins, which are the main power terminals, and then this wire here that plugs in, and that's the control signals. So watch out for power supplies like this. It's covered in plastic, so it should be completely, it should be entirely safe. However, when handling thick boy PS4 power supplies, I've actually had a zing off of one before where I was holding it by the sides like that and I touched the circuit board somewhere. And normally that's not something I would consider to be dangerous. The dangerous guys are these big capacitors here. And well, those ones are pretty exposed there, so just keep that in mind. You know, it's not going to kill you, but the worst thing you can get a belt off of one of these that will be enough to make you jump a foot in the air. So keep that in mind. Ask me how I know. Right, what's next? All right, we're going to start taking off the back now. And we need to disconnect these ribbons here. So this first one just pulls out. This next one has a locking bar that flicks up and then comes out. This guy also just pulls out, and so does number 4. Those are free. And now we need to use a Phillips screwdriver to remove the rest of these Phillips screws. I'm going to get this antenna cable as well. I think that guy's got to come out. And times like this are where electric screwdrivers are God tier mode. I'm often asked which electric screwdriver I have. This is a Secure SQ-ES126, which is quite an expensive electric screwdriver, but it's also the best one I've used, and I've had a couple now. I will put an affiliate link to buy one of these in the description down below if you fancy one. They're about $100, but like I say, if you do this on a regular basis and you want to be able to zap screws out with this much ease, this is what you want. Zap screws out with this much ease, he says, fumbling half the screws. There are a couple of variations of the screws here as well. So I would strongly recommend taking a picture of the top before you start taking out the screws so you know which one goes where. I already have pictures because I'm recording video. I will be using that as a reference when I reassemble this. Right, looking around, looking around. That is all of them. So this metal panel should lift off now. Let's have a feel. I've missed one there. There we go. There are some buried down there. Okay, so you can see we've now exposed the bottom of the motherboard. And something I want to do now is just make sure I get all of these RAM thermal pads and capture those so they don't get lost. I'm going to pick these off with some tweezers and put them to one side because I want to brush down both the motherboard and this back plate. So these are reasonably tough, these, and with a little bit of care, a pair of tweezers should take them off without any damage. In a perfect world, you could replace these with some fresh ones, but I don't think you'll see any meaningful performance difference, if I'm honest. There's a reason why they've got just some little pads here and not actual thermal paste or anything like that. You need something, but just some pads will do. Now we're going to unplug this wire down here and we're going to take out these 2 screws here. So this is all under tension. So as I undo this screw, I'm going to hold down on it to relieve the tension on the screw and just gently let go. That's our backplate off. And now our motherboard should lift out. Oh, we've got another cable up here that I've missed. I'm going to get that as I lift the board up. Oh, that's holding on, actually. Let's tweezer that out. Oof. That one's a tough one. Let's try again for the board. If I can lift the board out, I'll have more cable to hold on to. No, that has to come out first. Okay. Let's lower back in again. Let's try a different strategy here. I'm going to take my tweezers and just dig them in. Let's give you a closer look. I'm going to take my tweezers and just put them into these little holes here and use that as a push point. Oh, there's some movement. Oh, there we go. That was very unpleasant. Any experienced disassemblers for these in the comments, by all means feel free to give your suggestions for that guy. Unless I just got unlucky, and that was a tough one. Anyway, let's return to the previous orientation, and this board should lift out now. Just like that. Oops, someone else holding on at the top. Who's that? That's the other antenna. There we go. Right, there's our motherboard. So we've got a few things to observe here. Oh, we've got this back plate as well. So I'm going to brush the dust off of this. We're going to replace this thermal paste here. There's some more thermal pads on top here that have come off from the VRMs, the voltage regulators. And I'm going to check this 2032 battery while I'm here as well, just to make sure that that's still good. So now I've disassembled this far. We have access to the board, and we also have access to the fan on both sides. So through there and through there. So I'm going to take all of this out the back and I'm going to airline it with my air compressor. So you could also use a can of compressed air or one of those electric computer duster thingies or whatever you've got to hand, basically. I'm going to use my compressor because that's what I have to hand. So I'll see you in a minute with some non-dusty pieces. And while we're here as well, if we take out these 3 screws, which I've just loosened off, and then flip the console back over where we were, we can actually lift out this heatsink plate. Oh, I've got one more up in the top right that I've missed. There we go. And that actually gives us more direct access to help get these clumps of dust out. I've already started airlining this, and as you can see, there's still stuff there. So I'd actually say it's important to do this because there's a lot that can get trapped here that you might miss. Right, I've compressed off everything, and there's a little bit of surface dust left on things that the compressor misses, so I'm just going to give everything a quick brush down with either a brush or just a soft cloth for good measure. However, the worst of it is all off now. Right, I'm going to check our BIOS battery while I'm here. So I'll put my multimeter into voltage mode, and I'm going to put my black probe on any ground point, which is just all the copper here, and just check the top there. We've got 305 volts there, which is not stellar. It needs to be 3 volts or higher, basically. That's kind of on the limit. I'm going to change this for good measure. It's not something that I think is going to be a problem. However, while I'm this deep into the laptop, for the sake of sticking in another CR2032, and I keep these in stock anyway, they cost nothing, I'm just going to change this while I'm here. I can figure out how the heck this clip works. I did it. There you go, that's better. There's a fresh battery in there at 3.3 volts. As an interesting thing, these batteries are 3 volts nominal. So you might say, well, surely 3 volts is fine because that's nominal, right? Well, they were never designed to be BIOS batteries in computers, these things. And the BIOS circuits are 3 volt logic. And if you go lower than 3 volts, you might get unexpected behavior. So technically, these cells shouldn't be considered empty until they're down to like, I don't know, 2.8 volts or something like that. But in reality, anything less than 3 volts could be causing problems, which is why realistically we're replacing this at like 80% capacity kind of thing. But that's just how it be. Now I'm going to clean up the old thermal paste with some isopropyl alcohol and a bit of loo roll. If you don't have isopropyl alcohol, any kind of, you could use window and glass cleaner at a push. Just be careful not to drown everything. Spray directly onto the loo roll and we'll just wipe that all off. At a push, you can do this dry as well. It's just a bit easier if you have some kind of thermal interface removal stuff. And if you get any big chunks like this, just carefully pick them off with some tweezers. It's not critical that you've taken off every tiny little bit around here. Having a clean die, which is this bit on top, the shiny bit, that's the important bit, as long as that is clean. So there's a picture of the CPU just for good measure. Interesting that it's actually Sony Interactive Entertainment branded. I expected an AMD logo on that, because it's an AMD chip. The thermal paste that I'm going to be replacing it with is Arctic MX5, which is just my daily use thermal paste. Arctic MX4 is also very common and very cheap and is quite acceptable. MX5 that I'm using here is quite goopy. MX4 is a bit thicker and a bit easier to handle. But either way, I'm just going to put, I'm going to draw an X across this just because never not X. Probably a little bit overkill, but that doesn't matter too much for something like this. There we go. Just putting on anything other than stock thermal paste will be drastically better. So when we put that down, that's just going to smush evenly across the chip. I'll also just wipe down the back of the heatsink as well. That's very easy to do. And now we're ready to reassemble. So I'm going to start with the body of the laptop and we're going to drop this heatsink back in. That went in there. And before we put our motherboard in, we're just going to double check that we've got these 3 thermal pads down here on the VRMs and these 2 guys up here, which are probably for some regulators or some of this system on chip stuff going on up here. Not sure what that's doing, doesn't matter. So that is in place and I'm going to position that like so and then just lower it on and make sure we don't get any of these underway. Once we put this down, we don't really want to lift it up again, so I kind of want to get this right first time. There we go. Back plate and then the other back plate. So to refit these tension screws, I'm just going to pick up the thread on the first one but leave it very loose. And then do the same thing down here. And now I'm going to try and tighten these down kind of evenly. So we're not going to take one down to the stops first. I'm just going to put a bit into that one, and back, and so on. And that should just tighten things down in an even manner. And it reduces the chance of, if we come down unevenly, the heatsink and the CPU might come together like this, and all of the thermal paste will get squeezed out from the gap. So we don't want that to happen. It probably won't, but if you take them down evenly, that just reduces the chance of such a thing occurring. Right, we can reconnect these 2 wires now. Now, before we put on our back cover, we've got to replace our thermal pads that were on these guys. So I'll just plop those on top. Don't worry if there's a little bit of dust. It'll be okay, they'll do their job. And if you find that these guys are very oily or have left sort of a residue on things, don't worry about that, that's also quite normal. They can actually leave quite a mess behind these thermal pads. I've seen motherboards where there's literally just a dripping trail of oil that has come out of the thermal pads. It's weird stuff. Again, make sure that none of the cables are trapped. Now we need to refit all of these millions of Phillips screws. So there are 3 types. There's the black one, and then there's 2 types of silver. There's a self-tapping silver one, which is a longer guy, and then these small machine screws. So 3 types of screws. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to refer back to the picture I had from where I started, and I'll just arrange all of the screws roughly in place. There we go, my screws are aligned. Time to buzz them all down. Now I'll reconnect the ribbon cables. And also this Wi-Fi antenna that went across the top. Or it could be Bluetooth. One of them would be Wi-Fi and the other will be Bluetooth. I'm not sure which is which. Flipping the board over, we're ready to put the power supply back in. And while I was working on it, this other antenna that was clipped on top here, this guy kind of fell out, so I need to guide this guy back in. So it plugs in down the bottom left here, which is on the other side of where the Wi-Fi antenna went in. So I'll click that onto the board, and then I just need to guide it through this little cable guide so the wire sits in the correct place. And then that guy comes along this void here, goes through this cable guide and sits up here. So we'll get the power supply plugged in and we'll drop it into place and route that antenna at the same time. Once this is lined up, we're going to give a firm press about there-ish where the power pins are. And you should feel that go very distinctly into place. Now I'll put in the Phillips screws we've got, and then the 3 security screws. So there's a slightly shorter security screw, and that one goes on the right when the fan is in the top left. And that now leaves us putting covers on. So have I got the right cover here? I need the one that has the DVD slot in it. That's the top, so we'll hook that over the back and click that into place. And I've got one more screw that I missed there as well. That was the random one that the guy told me to remove at the start. Don't know why. Either way, it's back in now. Right, bottom cover. Hook it over the front. This one's a bit deeper, so you'll need to do a little bit more finagling. There we go. And that's just gone on with a nice convincing click. Hard drive can go in. So that goes in with the metal plate facing toward the bottom of the laptop. And now we can secure that with the screw, and I'll also put in the security screw at the back. And there's our rebuilt PS4. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to run along the front here with a toothbrush that I'll spray some window and glass cleaner onto. So I'm just going to squirt just a little bit of glass cleaner on there. And I'll just run this along the front here, and that'll just remove that layer of grime that we can see, and like the little grime around the power button and eject button and stuff like that. And the Sony logo. I'll just make those come up and look nice and clean. There we go. And we can spend time detailing the top covers and all the rest of that. You can go over this with some multi-surface polish that you'd use on general home furniture. I'm not going to go to town on this because this case is reasonably scuffed up anyway. It's not perfection, so I don't think it's worth spending hours making this thing immaculate. If your case is still in really good condition, that's probably worth doing. I don't think that's worth doing here. The main objective was to clean out all the cooling system and replace that old thermal paste, which we've now done. So the only thing that's left to do now is just to turn it on and make sure that it works. And there we go, everyone. That is one working PS4 with, and it's nice and quiet now. I didn't start it up before we started, but based on the amount of dust that came out of this thing, it would have been pretty horrifying. So all of that said and done, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found that interesting or useful, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.